Hello, everybody. Welcome back to vlog number 28. It's been a hot minute. I realized the last time I did a vlog was September 4, and that was when I was just coming back from getting sick. Over the weekend, I went camping. Big Sur, absolutely beautiful. It was a heat wave. And initially, what I was going to do, I think I was supposed to do a vlog last week before we left. And today I'm just going to do two vlogs and release it. And, something that was just such a hot topic last week was The Bachelorette and the series or the season finale and what had happened to Jen Tran and how the producers did her dirty, how none of the men that were in line to date her even knew that she was going to be the contestant. So again, she was set up for failure. And I think a lot of women that were coming out of it who identified as first gen Asian American were really upset, and just people were traumatized by the fact, as when you watch the series finale, things just started becoming more apparent of how some of the guests that were on there or contestants that were on there weren't necessarily there for the right reasons. And it really, really triggered me personally as I was watching it because I think it triggered a lot of people, but I think, when you see someone that is dating that has similar issues, and I think a lot of people can identify with the story of either coming from a broken family or coming from a family where maybe the relationship dynamics of your parents weren't necessarily the healthiest, and that's why you have this resistance towards getting into relationships, whether you learned it from a family member or whether you had your own experiences of being in relationships, of being cheated on. But then ultimately, when you start doing inner work, when you start doing spiritual work, you start to realize that a lot of it was nurtured or it was taught either by mainstream media or by family members that you saw them get into like toxic relationships, toxic dynamics. And so the thing that I found about, you know, Jen was the fact that she was self-aware, as she started opening herself up either on one-on-one dates or group dates. She was very much, the type of person that knew like, okay, this is why the reason, why I shut down or why I try to be perfect. And I was actually surprised at the backlash that she got from being so transparent about her fears and doubts on national television. I think that was something that was different about her in particular, was the fact that she didn't shy away or try to have this front that she was perfect or that she was healed. And when you go on national television and you share such vulnerable things, it takes a big step. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And I hope that people who do watch it or did watch it realize like, oh, I'm actually not alone. But I know it was actually very polarizing because a lot of people actually did not like it as well because it made them uncomfortable. And I have to say this, if you spot it, you got it. And really lean into why does it make you feel uncomfortable when you see someone express something that they aren't as confident. It's not like all of us are born one day with confidence. I haven't met anyone who was like that. And if they are, then I think it's like borderline arrogance, to be honest. And I think the whole purpose of our journey when it comes to life, when it comes to just, being alive is the fact that we do have a lot of these emotional blocks, and how do we overcome it? Maybe it was instilled by parents, maybe it was instilled by dynamics that happened in school, maybe you were bullied in school, whatever it may be. It's about learning to love yourself through that every single time that you have a trigger or challenge you're facing, and kind of getting curious and sitting with yourself and learning to overcome that as opposed to bypass it. And, the thing that I found so interesting is, you know, there are moments in our life where we can let those experiences eclipse us from having the life that we want. And when we do that, we stay living in the past, right? And so one of the really, really interesting things is, one of the very last people that was chosen was Marcus. And he talked very, very openly about how he came from a family where, he was left, he was abandoned, he had childhood abandonment issues. He feared of, someone not being able to love him or be there for him. And it just really prevented him from being able to move forward. And you see him just blurt out, "I love you," at the moment of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose you," type of thing, And I think that anyone who comes to the conclusions of, "Oh, I love you," based off of me losing you, that's not necessarily love. That's loving out of fear as opposed to loving out of expansion. And so if you look at that and you see someone who's just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't move past this. I can't move beyond that," the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is go to therapy. Therapy is a great way to understand the reason why you have those, family dynamics and how they're influencing you. And it's a great opportunity to work with a therapist to see, like, how are you projecting that even onto a woman, even onto a father. And so, like, whatever wound or abandonment that you're dealing with which parent the most, I actually encourage you to work with that same type of sex with your therapist. And it reminded me of a time when I actually had dated someone who reminded me a lot of Marcus. And it's funny when I think about it, it's just like I was very, I was still on my early journey of dating emotionally unavailable people, and it was fine for me because I was emotionally available on myself. I didn't really want a relationship, even though I said I wanted a relationship. That's why I think it's very important that, like, honesty is so key when you are trying to work through any of your blocks, any of your patterns, because what you'll start to find is that what you're actually verbally saying is not in alignment with what your actions are saying, right? Or what your actions and what you're doing. And so when I found myself dating this person, they had different relationships before, but it was always like you couldn't get past a certain step with them. It was either like 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back. And so what it did was kept me in this liminal space of like continually waiting, but me actually focusing more on the potential of the man that I was with versus what was reality, and knowing that this person, unless they actually did work on themselves, it didn't matter how much I wanted to be there. It didn't matter how much I assured them until they were able to deal with it within themselves and what their abandonment issues were and have the courage to face it. There's no way they could have been in a relationship. And in fact, I probably think that they're not even in a relationship right now. And this was back in 2018. And so it just shows you, like, this person also went to therapy too. And it's like, you can go to therapy, you can talk about it. But then again, I like to complement and integrate the body work into it. That's why actually I do EFT tapping. So even though myself, like, I was working on the mental, I was working on the psyche, I was doing therapy work myself, working on my emotional unavailability, I ended up doing EFT tapping because what I realized was I still had a lot of emotions that weren't necessarily getting removed energetically from my body because I was still reacting to that energy and to that headspace in outside of therapy, because therapy only helped me regurgitate what happened. It only helped me have an understanding, but that's where I stayed stuck. If you only have an understanding of certain things, then it's hard for you to actually move forward. And so that's why, for me personally, when I work with people, I like to have this holistic, harmonious mind, body, and spirit. Like, you work with your therapist, we uncover some stuff here, and you go with her and you actually, or him, or whomever, and you find out that stuff, and we work with it complementary, and we do EFT tapping, we work on those limiting beliefs, we work on those blocks, we help you get back to that specific space and time of where you experience that moment, so we can actually somatically, energetically move that out of your body so you can have a different experience. And I just did that with a client last week when we worked on a specific memory that she was challenged by in the current moment, but then we realized, oh, it was a memory from when she was 22. Oh, it was actually a memory from when she was 5. And so I asked her, like, have you worked on it with your therapist? And she said, I've talked about it, but I didn't know that they were actually linked in that way. And so what happens is when you start to understand that, you have a deeper understanding of yourself and you're able to emotionally, surgically remove it from your body. And then that's where we bring in the spirituality. Right. And then we start to understand, like, what is our purpose in life? How can I actually better? How can I like improve myself? How do I know that the purpose of like what I'm serving in life is actually beyond me? And how can I create a new paradigm, a new blueprint, a new family blueprint that's like emotionally healthy for other people and children, so we can have a better world, essentially. And that's why I do what I do. And so when I realized that the person that I was with was not going to move forward. Like, I clearly remember it, it was totally self-sabotage. Um, we were having a beautiful time. We were not really getting serious, but it was almost like, um, sometimes what people do is to prevent hurt is they will future trip and automatically get into this headspace of like, okay, if I'm on a date with you, I want to protect myself. So I'm going to look for every single thing possible that could possibly derail the relationship so I don't get hurt and I can reject you before you reject me and before I become fully vested in it. Like, this always happens. Not like you see it in the beginning stages of dating when all of a sudden someone's like, oh my God, I don't like their socks. Or like, oh my God, they're like this. Like, oh, like, no, and just start to notice that within you when you have that fight, flight, freeze response or fawn response when you are dating someone. And the bigger question is, to help you manage it, is, do I want to see this person again? It doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be the end all be all of you having this doom and gloom relationship, right? And I used to be that way too. I used to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be stuck with this person for the rest of my life. But I mean, like, look at the words that I was using. Look at the mentality that I had. Look at the perception that I had. I thought that being committed meant that you were ball and chain stuck to someone, that it actually diminished you, that you weren't able to feel expansive and free. And that was because I was projecting my previous relationships into new relationships because I didn't know what a healthy model actually looked like. And I am proven fact that you can actually have a healthy relationship without having any healthy models. Like, it's because of the work that I've done and it's the work that I've devoted and committed myself to. And it's learning to say no to things. I'm not trying to make stuff work when I know it's not working. Like, if something is toxic, I'm going to be the first one to say, like, I want out of this, because I love myself too much to actually stay in a relationship like that. And what I've noticed is that sometimes it's easier to stay in a relationship and make it work because you think that that is the spiritual curriculum that you need. But maybe the spiritual curriculum is you need to get the F out, right? Maybe it's you need to understand that you can't settle for less anymore. You can't settle for breadcrumbs, or that maybe the spiritual curriculum is, if you want to stop self-sabotaging, then stop staying in relationships that don't honor who you are. And it is very hard, but it comes from a lot of self-worth and self-love. And it comes from this act and embodiment of, I love myself so much that I would rather be alone than be in a relationship that keeps me feeling empty. And when you get to that place, when you start to make changes that align to you, that honor you, that really, really embody who you are and your self-worth, and building that confidence, trust me, you are going to attract people that actually honor you in that way. And they will find it like, oh my gosh, like, I can't treat this person like that. And when you have that power, you're able to make decisions where you're on your own 2 feet. You're not making decisions based off of fear. You're not making decisions based off of, afraid of rejection, abandonment wounds, right? And so what happens is your picker starts to get better. And that's what I realized, is that when I was watching The Bachelorette, and I was like realizing the 2 people that she picked were 2 people that actually had the same type of, wounds that she had. They all had abandonment issues from either one parent or 2 parents. And there are different ways that you can identify trauma bonding. Trauma bonding is when you're the perpetrator and when you're the victim and when you bond with that person because they're traumatizing you. Or it could be you experience a similar trauma and you bond over that. Those are like the two definitions in the ways that I've seen it used. And I just found it so interesting to note that the main character, Jen, had actually picked and selected people based off of similar abandonment wounds that she had. And sometimes what happens is you start to think like, okay, maybe they've healed through it. I mean, like the minimum, like the minimum that someone can do to heal themselves. I mean, it's not even a guarantee, is like therapy work, because they're willing to like actually explore the past. They're willing to invest in putting money behind wanting to improve. Again, it doesn't guarantee that they're actually going to change, because I had that experience of dating someone who had gone to therapy, but just, I mean, what ended up happening there is it did get a little bit serious, and they had a freak out moment and ended up breaking up with me. I was supposed to meet their friends, and they had contacted me and told me that they weren't feeling good. Then I received a text message saying that they were breaking up with me. And so that just shows you that their headspace. I remember, like, in previous conversations, they kept comparing um like compatibility. And granted, compatibility is very, very important. But when you are, unfolding and starting to learn about someone, compatibility usually doesn't happen until the 3-year mark. The first one is just like really just being, the first year is being in honeymoon, trying to enjoy each other, trusting each other. What does that mean? Understanding each other. But like to really see the longevity in an actual relationship, that usually gets in year 3, because then you start to really understand who they are at their core, and wondering like if this is something that I can work with, this is something that I can deal with, right? Do I want to move forward? So like the 3-year mark is like really pivotal, and it's a crucial. And so that's what ended up happening. And for me, that was a huge step, because one, that was the first person that I had dated in maybe 2 years. And I was like, wow, I actually opened my heart. I see this person's wounding. It's not my fault. This is their fault. And that's the thing that you're going to have to often deal with too, is like thinking that maybe the relationship is going to save the other person. It is not your job to do someone else's spiritual work, right? That creates a codependent dynamic. And we're here all about interdependence, where you are responsible for you, I am responsible for me. And whatever we bring to the table, it needs to come from a healed place, right? And so not taking responsibility for other people's healings, like easily I could have done it. I could have said like, oh, well, maybe we should try. And like, I didn't try to convince someone to be with me, because I knew exactly what was going on, that this person needed to heal. They needed to do more work, and they needed to figure it out on their own. It wasn't my job to tell them or bring awareness to it. That's their own job. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I was celebrating that, but at the same time, I was wondering like, oh, okay, like this is really interesting. I was interested in someone, and this is what ended up happening. But you also have to think about, there is a fine line between thinking about who you're picking and then thinking about that other person and their responsibility of who they're presenting to you during the dating, as it actually unfolds, of like them getting to know you, you getting to know them. And so sometimes it's really important. And I learned this through a spiritual mentor that I was working with a long time ago, of, you know, the biggest thing. It's like, okay, obviously you have like your physical needs, right? Physical needs. I'm talking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic needs, right? Physical, are they, in a job that they enjoy, where they're making money? You can support yourself, they can support you also, you can support them, like, just making sure that money is taken care of, making sure that they have a job, um, all of those things, right? And then it's emotional. Then it's like really understanding, okay, do they actually have an emotional language? Can they talk to me about things that bother them throughout the day? Are they actually astute? Are they aware of certain things? Do they understand how their actions affect me. What are their reflections from previous relationships have they had? Have they ever had a long-term relationship? If no one's ever had a long-term relationship, that is a red effing flag. Like, I don't care what you say. It's like, no, you don't want to be the person trying to groom the virgin. Like, I'm sorry. And so just being really mindful about, like, it's interesting that how sometimes in society we have stricter boundaries and criteria for jobs than we do for the people that we might create families with, right? If you realistically think about it, if you take your emotions out of it and you're like, wow, if this was an employee at my company that I'm trying to hire for, and they ghost and sometimes they disappear and don't show up for work, um, and they make me feel bad. Would you want them at your company? No. So why would you want them as the partner or the father or mother of your children? Like, why is that okay? I mean, it's actually safer to have that type of employee as opposed to having that employee in your household, right? And so I just want you to be very mindful of how these decisions are affecting you. Like, I know it can be scary when we have to face our fears, when we have to look at our abandonment wounds, because maybe it's like we might cry and we might not ever stop. Maybe there's this ache inside your body that just feels really, really bad. But you know how to take care of yourself. What are the things that you love to do that make you feel really good inside? Right? You have to really connect to those things and know that your body can handle those emotions. And that if you allow yourself to handle those emotions, even if for 5-10 minutes, like, just know that it'll pass and you won't ever have to do it again. It's kind of like my relationship with throwing up. I absolutely hate it, but it's like the act of throwing up, just like, ugh, it's disgusting. I hate it. The feeling before it, how you feel so sick. And instead of trying to repress it, it's going to make you feel, if you repress it, you feel worse longer, as opposed to just doing it. And then afterwards, you're like, okay, I feel better. Right. And so that's why I love EFT, because when we tap on our body, when we tap on those meridian points, it's telling our body that it's okay. It's telling our body that we're safe to do this. It's telling our body that I've got you. And that's why I'm reinstating my EFT tapping circles again. And so the first one's happening October 16th. Love for you to sign up. I will share this in the video description with you. And I just, there's like so much that I could say about it. And there's so many different angles, but I just really wanted to share that, if you are looking for a healthy relationship, just know that you are on the right path of questioning whether you are in a relationship, whether you're not, whether it's like creating your, vision of what it is that you want to live with, and really exploring how can you actually be those qualities that you want in a partner, and really, really being open and aware and looking to signs and really understanding, like, who's actually picking my partner. Is it the little child inside of me that is still acting from those emotional wounds I have? Or is it the matured person who is really thinking about how can I build a family and who do I want to be a part of that journey with me, right? And that's why we do this work, to prevent ourselves picking from our emotionally wounded place, and more from our worthiness, and more from, I no longer have to react from my abandonment. I no longer have to react from my rejection. I no longer have to react from, being seen by mom or dad and wanting this person to pick me and having that eclipse how they actually treat me, because I just want to be chosen, right? It's about learning to make better choices that come from a higher awareness of what's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes when we're in it, sometimes we're in our emotions, we aren't able to see it very clearly. And that's why I love working with people, to help them see it, like, okay, I'm actually seeing this come up for you, and it's like sharing a mirror, it's showing a mirror, right? But through the work of, doing spiritual transformation, of the work of doing like, shadow work, of, the work of really looking at where are these origins that really created these emotional wounds and blocks inside me. Once you find that awareness, you get to move past them. And that's the beauty of it. And it becomes this journey of, when you watch a movie, there's like highs and lows, right? And so being on this journey, that is nothing is going to be like completely high all the time. But that's what makes the high so great, is that you come from a place where you're feeling spiritually low, and then, you start to feel good. But then again, it's like you want to come from like a neutral place. You don't want to have too much highs and lows. But you start to recognize the beauty when it doesn't rain, right? You start to recognize the beauty of the sunlight when there aren't any clouds. And so wherever you are on this journey, if you happen to find yourself in a relationship where you are just so ready to let go and you don't know what to do next, it's a beautiful opportunity to think about your future and the path and the space that you want to create for yourself, because it's a blank slate. You got to start clean, you got to start fresh, you get to do that. And that's the beauty of being able to do the inner work, is that no one is there to actually distract you from yourself. As painful as that is, and as hard as it is, it's the best thing that you can do for yourself. And it's the best gift that you can do. And in retrospect, I look at it now, because I was doing this work for about like 5 or 6 years, like really heavily, intensely working on relationships specifically, and getting my own spiritual curriculum of like emotionally unavailable people. I like can do a whole thing on every single person I've dated, but I'm not going to do that. But it's like, in retrospect, when I think of the relationship that I'm in now, I'm like, wow, this is so healthy. This is so good. If I didn't know who I was and I just like knew my relationship at a glance, I would think like I would want that. And I'm so glad that I have that. And I'm so glad I did the work to get that, right? Even though I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I'm just here to show and share you that it is possible to heal from those emotional wounds. It is possible to have self-worth. It is possible to have self-love. It's possible to have self-acceptance. It's possible to get to a place where you choose yourself, as opposed to just choosing someone that's less than what you deserve. And that you have the courage to say no, and you have the courage to really, really step in alignment with what it is that you actually want, right? Because once you learn to work on this part of like relationships and healthy dynamics, then it opens up a whole world of how you can interact with every single part of your life, right? Like this might be the first step, then it's working with family, then it's working with, what is your relationship to your dharma in life, to your purpose in life, to your career in life. It just opens up so much. And then what does it look like to become a mother or a father, if that's what you desire? And so it's kind of like that whack-a-mole, where it's like you get one, there's another one, but it's not like, oh, there's another one in an annoying sense, but there's a new chapter, new level, new opportunity for growth. And so I'm going to leave it in the video description, how to work with me one-on-one, how to do the EFT tapping circle and sign up, because I would love to help you. Obviously, this is like one of my passion areas, and I really want you to know that there is hope for you, that you don't have to live in any of those old patterns, that you can actually create a new chapter and a new way of being for yourself. Okay. All right. I'll see you in the next vlog. Bye.